Okay, so we have to get section 10.1, 10.2, and 10.3 done before we do the rest of chapter 13. So today we're going to do section 10.1. That's what this is. It has quite a bit of notes to it. Okay, it's not quite a bit of notes. It's really just a couple of notes. But they are notes that you do need to write down. These are talking about relations. So we're going to start some basic concepts that are going to follow us all the way through. Just like everything else has kind of always come back, this always comes back. And it'll always come back in this particular form. So we need to talk about some of these concepts. A relation is a set of ordered pairs. Now you can have relations in at least 3 different formats. One of the formats is a mapping. One of the formats is ordered pairs, and then another format is a graph. You've seen ordered pairs before and you've seen a graph before, so you know how those two relate. But you've never seen a mapping before, so I wanted to talk a little bit about a mapping. A mapping always has one set of numbers or letters or words connected to another set. This first set is called your domain, and the second set is called your range. This first set of numbers acts just like all of your x variables, and the second set of numbers acts just like all of your y variables. It's the lines in between that show you how they relate to one another. So, if 0 is connected to 1, that's the same thing as saying 0 is related to 1. Since you know they're related, it would be the exact same thing as if we wrote the point 0, 1. Because that's what that's saying. It's like it's a point. Which means another point would be 1, 1, because they're connected by a line. And then another point would be 2, 0, because they're connected by a line. So the relations inside of a mapping are the actual lines that do the connecting. The first set of numbers is called your domain, and the second set is called your range. Over here, our first set of numbers we always called our x variable, and our second set of numbers we always called our y. It's the same thing when we did graphing. We said this was our x-axis and this is our y-axis. So if I wanted to graph these points, 0, 1, 0 on the x, 1 up on the y is that point right there. 1, 1 is over here, and 2, 0 is over here. Now we can't connect them because they only asked for 3 points. So we've demonstrated these relations either this way, or that way. So there are 3 different ways you can demonstrate it. Now, here's the tricky bit. Just like we called our first set a domain, also you have to understand that the domain is a set of all x values. So if they give you a set of ordered pairs and they want you to list out the domain, you would have to say that the domain is going to be 0, because that's an x, 1, because that's an x, and 2, because that's an x. Likewise, they wanted the set of all y values, that's the range. So if I was given the ordered pairs, I would say that my range is going to be 1 and 0. Now I wrote them in that order for a reason. Your book always wants to make things pretty, so they always need to be in numerical order for your book. Now while we had 1 up here twice, notice I only wrote it 1 time when we're talking about our range. just like it was only written one time here when we were talking about the range. It can be used more than once, but we only have to write it down once when we're referring to our range. Okay? There's one other way you can get relations. And that is with an equation. So I'm looking at problem number 12 on page 415. It says x minus 2y equals 14. And the directions say, given that the domain, is negative 1, 0, and 2, so they tell you the domain. They want to know what the range is going to be. Well, remember before we were talking about points, our domain was just the x value. So if I wanted to find the ranges, which is what they're asking me for, I have to figure out what my y values are that match up with those x values, because that's what this was, the y values that matched up with the x values. So in order to do that, I'm going to have to plug each of those in. So I'd have negative 1 minus 2y equals 14. 0 minus 2y equals 14. And then 2 minus 2y equals 14. And I solve for y. So that's going to give me negative 1, add 1 to both sides. Negative 2y is equal to 15. Divide by negative 2. Y equals negative 7.5. I'm okay with that. And then subtract 0 from both sides. That gives me negative 2y equals 14. Divide by negative 2. So y equals negative 7. And then subtract 2 from both sides. Negative 2y is equal to 12. Divide by negative 2. Y equals negative 6. Since these are my y's, then they are what I need to put in up here. Because what they asked you for was the range. Sometimes, like in problem number 2, if you'll look at problem number 2, they just ask you for the domain and the range. So my domain is going to be all the numbers on the left underneath my x, because domain is all your x's, and my range is going to be all the numbers on the right. They say to state the relation as a set of ordered pairs. So they also want you to go through and write down the ordered pairs. So they'd say parentheses 2 comma negative 1 close parentheses, 5 comma 3, 7 comma negative 1, writing out the ordered pairs like we did before. And then in problem number 6, they give you a mapping and they want you to do the ordered pairs and then tell them what the domain and the range is. And then in problem number 8, they give you a set of points and a picture, and you have to go through and figure out what each of those individual points are, and then you have to give the domain and the range for those points, which I think you know how to do. And then in problem number 14, It's just like problem number 12 was, except it's got a fraction in it. So you divide by 2 first, and then move stuff around. So, questions? I doubt you have any. It's not very hard at all. And the next section is even easier, but because we have time, I'm going to let you do it in 2 separate sections. So for today, the classwork on page 414 and 415. Classwork is numbers 1, 5, 9, and 13. And then the homework is numbers 3, 7, 11, and 17. And that's it for this section. And we'll worry about the next section tomorrow. Okay. Have a good day.